Warning, some of this video and content that you will see or listen to may be confronting or distressing to some individuals. This episode discusses mental health and suicide. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek help or contact Lifeline 131114 or visit the website of them lifeline.org.au or go to the website Beyond Blue, www.beyondblue.org.au/get support.
I said to Madge before, I said we're probably the most nervous I've been in a while. I've known Madge for a long time, playing with him at the Western Jets. One of those photos was at the Jets, and he said he's nervous as well, so that makes two of us. So thanks for coming down. Obviously your story is quite unique, and it's quite special that you're still standing here. And we watched the project, and I've watched it probably, I reckon 10 times. And every single time I nearly start crying because I know you. And how, I guess, close you probably shouldn't be here. We're lucky you're here right now telling your story. And I know you should be really proud of how far you've come. I've listened to your audio book. I've got about 45 minutes left, and it was just, when you think you know someone's story, but then you go back and actually hear it from a different perspective of listening to your upbringing, listening to you starting footy here with Joey. I still remember you playing against you at Wyndham Vale, and just how far you've come to be playing AFL now is just insane. So I guess take us through your early years of going from fleeing Sudan to then Egypt to then Australia.
Can everyone hear me? Oh, is it? All right, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This is an amazing facility. I was blown away when I walked in, but when I saw everyone, I'm so nervous. But forgive me if I stutter or anything like that. So thank you guys for having me. Look, this is a great initiative that you guys are doing, in the mental health space. It's something that I'm really passionate about, given that I've gone through it myself. But yeah, I came to Australia in 2003, born in Sudan, mum and dad from South Sudan, one of 9 kids, 5 boys and 4 girls. So it's quite a big family. Lived in Egypt for 3 years in Cairo. That was really tough. Australia is one of the hardest countries to come to. Trying to organise a visa, especially having a big family, airfares. So it was quite a journey, but after 3 years we were really lucky. My parents have always been involved in the church. Got all their savings, and they were still not enough for us to come here. So Dad met a priest through the parish. He's from France, and told him about our circumstances and what we needed. And he said, I can't promise you anything, but I'll go back to my parish in France and speak to them. And luckily enough, they raised some money for the family, and were able to come here. I remember the first day I got here. It was quite a hot afternoon on Australia Day. It took us a couple of days to get here. And for the first time in my life, we can just relax. We've always lived in apartments and with other families, so it was quite, the house was always busy. Everyone was sleeping in whatever spot they could find. So to finally move into a 4-bedroom house, I still had to share a room with my brother. So and then over the next sort of year, just spent settling in. I didn't speak a word of English when I first came here, so I went to an English language school centre for a while. And my dad's background is teaching, so I was in the books a fair bit. Going to the library, reading as much as I can, trying to fast track my English. And then from then moved straight into Year 7. So that's really when the challenges started happening. As a migrant, when you move to a country like Australia, you know, trying to fit in. There weren't too many people that looked like me when I first came here. So that was hard. After school, was pretty much going home. Me and my brother, recess and lunchtime, it was just us two. So that's when I got introduced to footy. So I'm glad that happened. You know, I couldn't kick at the time, so it was a bit of a laughing stock. And the kids, you know, once I started making friends, things were really easy. But you know, I moved all over the western suburbs. First moved to Taylor's Lakes, and then, you know, and then mum and dad, you know, saved enough money and bought a house out in Wyndham Vale. So that's how me and Dill met. We played against each other over the years. Williamstown versus Wyndham Vale. They always beat us because they always had the talented players. And then settled in at MacKillop College out in Werribee. So that's where all my siblings went to school. So yeah.
And your living arrangements in Egypt, you stayed with another family. How many people were in that house?
So there was other three families. You know, there was about 7 of us, 7 kids at the time, and then they had 5 or 6. So it was just chaos. You know, showering when it came to dinner time, and it was just, yeah, like it's, you know, sometimes I take some of those things for granted, but you know, I'm quickly reminded by my parents of my upbringing.
And you talked about in your book about, do you know what I mean, walking through the sort of the Egypt streets and being scared about, do you know what I mean, getting bashed and stuff like that, and looking different and stuff like that. And how did you go? Do you know what I mean, sometimes you had to lie about your nationality and that sort of stuff to make sure you didn't get bashed.
Yeah.
How did you go with that?
Yeah, like always coming back from school, caught the train, and you know, there was a bit of a walk to get to the house, and yeah, like Egypt is an Islamic country, and you know, it's almost, you know, that's one thing I'm not a big fan of religion because it divides people. But yeah, a lot of times, you know, I had to lie about my nationality, you know, about my religion, just for my safety, because if I was to retaliate, you know, the consequences are that my whole family gets deported back. So, yeah.
So talk to me about that early years of starting footy, knowing no one, going to Wyndham Vale, not knowing how to kick. I mean, English is starting to become, do you know what I mean, I guess you're starting to begin it. And talk to me about how you got from there to then, do you know what I mean, the Western Jets, and then went on to getting picked up.
Yeah, so when mum and dad, when they bought the house, moved in, spent a couple of weeks just, it just happened, the footy club was just across the road, and I was pretty shy and nervous. I didn't want to go over, and you know, they're like, all right, go across and introduce yourself. And I went down the first night of training. You know, I was the first African, I think, to play at the club, so I've never seen anyone like me. And luckily enough, a mutual friend of ours, one of my best mates, his name is Joey, he came up to me and you know, uttered a few Dinka words. That's a tribe my family's from, back in Sudan. He said, "Hi, how are you?" And I, you know, I smiled straight away. I was like, "Oh, you know, there's some common ground there." And you know, Joey took me under his wing. He's also one of 9 kids, and you know, over those, I guess, 3 years at Wyndham Vale, I developed with my footy. And Shane Sexton. So he's a regional manager for the Western Jets, and you know, I got sent a letter. I think 3rd year in. I think I was 16 and a half at the time, and go down and train with the Western Jets. And I went there, and you know, I was quite a skinny kid at the time. So I went there, introduced myself, and it was on a Tuesday night. Dad drove me down, and there was the likes of Jaden Post, you know, Mitch Banner. So some of those guys, I was just in awe by how big they were, and you know, and how skillful they were. And over that summer, obviously Dill, Dill as a junior, he was a great footballer. Very unlucky not to get to the next level. We all met. It was Dill, Joe, Jack Gray, a few of those Williamstown boys. They were there, and we played the 16s carnival, and then we made it to the 18 squad. And I didn't play straight away. I didn't make my debut till probably a year in. Played a few games, and then the next year, that's really when my football started to take, started to improve. And 13 games in, and there was a bit of talk about potentially getting drafted. It was never anything that I've dreamt of, playing AFL footy. I mean, I'd watch on telly and stuff, but to make it to the AFL wasn't really something that I thought of until probably the last 6 weeks of the season. Started stringing some strong performances. Went to the state screening. The national draft was on our graduation night, so I didn't get drafted. It was pretty disappointing. Jack Fitzpatrick got drafted that night, and so I had to wait a couple more weeks. Went and trained at North Melbourne and at the Western Bulldogs, and that was when I started to think about, this could be a reality. I could potentially start playing AFL footy. And when that happened, my dad was overseas at the time, and we were just watching it at home. It was on live stream back then, so it was just waiting for my name to get read out. And when it finally appeared on the screen, was one of the most proudest moments in my life. Mum there with my siblings and a few other friends, and then 2 minutes later, I get a knock on the door. It was Brent Harvey. Came and gave me my North Melbourne jumper, number 38, and he said, now, welcome to the footy club. Now you're part of the Shinboners. And that day we celebrated a little bit, and then on the Monday, when started training, went down. I didn't have my license at the time, so my brother was driving me down to Arden Street, and I'd get there probably around 8 o'clock and train till about 4 in the afternoon. And I reckon for the first 3 months at the footy club, I'd just get to train and get home and just come and crash and sleep. I was just so tired. I just had no idea how hard those players worked, and and then started going to the gym. I was really weak through my core and my hips, so I didn't train with the main group for a while. I just wasn't up to it. So that was, I found it really hard to understand, why I couldn't join. Like now I'm an AFL player. Surely I can do what all the other boys do, but they didn't. I was an injury risk, so I had to be strong enough to be part of the group. So I spent a lot of time running laps, running on the sidelines, working on my kicking. And then the club asked me how I would feel about moving out of home, and obviously I was pretty excited. Coming from a big family, now I get my own space and all that stuff. My mum, she wasn't happy at all. From ever since I could remember, she's always just cooked for me. Pretty much done everything for me. So that Sunday she was packing up my stuff, and she's like, I hope you have fun and stuff. I don't think she meant it. So yeah, I moved in with a couple of players they're a bit older than me, just in Altona, player's house. Moved in there, started to learn, about more finances, learning how to cook. I only had 3 recipes. It was always spaghetti bolognese, and when it came to my turn to cook, and then navigating my way around the city. We had a lot of appointments. We used to, our physios were based in the city, and then my management was in Richmond, so had to buy a little tom-tom. And yeah, it was just a big developing year, that first year at North Melbourne. And then obviously, you know, I had to bide my time in the VFL. You know, I was playing VFL development, so that's not around anymore. And then after that, progressed into playing VFL footy, you know, against guys like James Podds Yardley. Who else was there? There was a really good bunch of guys when I came, because our affiliated club was Werribee at the time. So there's a really good bunch of guys there, and obviously I come from the West, and so it was a lot of fun in that first year. Yeah.
So tell me, like, I mean, you're going from never playing footy before, then I still remember, I mean, playing at the Jets, and you would just be taking those sort of marks all the time, but then get told not to kick, where Mitch Banner would run around you and get the handball every single time, to now playing AFL. The rise is, I don't think anyone can understand how steep that is. And then you go moving out of home, like you said. In the book you sort of mentioned, I mean, you obviously love your family, and giving back to them is a priority, and what they've done for you. And I mean, all they had to, my best mate's dad is also your manager. Yeah. And I mean, working through the finances of giving money to them, do you know what I mean, out of a paycheck, and not having enough for yourself and stuff like that. How did you go with having such a big family, and I guess you got that responsibility, or do you know what I mean, you think you do, of giving all that money to them? How did you go with that?
Yeah, it was really tough. I mean, you know, like growing up and stuff, didn't really have a lot because we've got such a big family, and just had to learn how to have those tough conversations with mum and dad or my siblings about you know, it's a tough balance, because you always want to look after the people around you, but you know, not to the extent where you're struggling yourself. So Shane Casley, which is my manager, he was great at sitting me down, sitting my parents down, and just saying, look, this is what's coming in, and if this is what goes out, Madge would be left with not much. And you know, it was hard, but in the end, I had to be really selfish to look after myself. And you know, Shane was almost my second dad, because some of those conversations were hard, but there were conversations that I needed to have with people around me. So.
And talk about your mum being a really big support, and your dad, when you were hoping to get drafted, like you mentioned in your book, how like your parents were like, do you know what I mean, you need to think about your studies and that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Footy's not a career. How did you go with, do you know what I mean, that sort of pressure, knowing that you want to get drafted, but they're saying, do you know what I mean, you need to focus on something else? Yeah,
like, you know, Dad wasn't really, he was supportive, but I think, you know, he's been a teacher all his life, so, you know, education is really big to him, which I understand. And like, it's, you know, you'd always need to have something to fall back onto. I think those first few years, when you do get drafted, there are opportunities to study, and you know, they ran courses through the football club, and I was able to finish my business and management degree through that. So that eased the pressure a little bit. But you know, I've been doing it for 13 years now, so I think sometimes I want to tell Dad, you know, like, you can make a career out of footy, but yeah, so I think it's really important. I mean, for any young kids out there that want to play AFL footy, it's great, you know. I mean, you can, but you also need to have a backup plan. So,
yeah, you talk about footy, like, do you know what I mean, you can be in and out so quickly. Do you know what I mean, you've been in the industry for 13 years, but you've been delisted, relisted. Do you know what I mean? It's such a pressure game. How do you go with? Do you know what I mean? Am I going to get another year? Am I going to lose my job? Like, how do you go with those sort of pressures?
Yeah, I mean, like, there are always conversations that I have with, you know, family or friends, people around me. You know, I've delisted at North Melbourne after being there for 11 years, and that was really tough. But at the same time, there were, I think, 11 players that also got delisted at that time. So, you know, it came to a point, I think after a few months, and I said, look, to be honest, you know, I've played for so long, maybe it's time to step away and go do something else. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but you know, finally had an opportunity to really catch up with family and friends that I haven't seen for a long time. And I think, you know, football is such a demanding industry that a lot of the time, you know, miss out on friends' weddings, family gatherings. A lot of commitment goes towards footy because it's just, like you said, it is a high-pressured environment and it's all based on performance. So I had 6 months off, and then you know, put on a lot of weight, and I was enjoying myself. And yeah, the Melbourne Football Club ring me and they say, would you like to come down and train with us for a month? And I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to go back, but I said, all right, well, you know, there's still that hunger in me that wants to fulfill, you know, my last little bit of footy. So I went there. I was so unfit. You know, they're a really fit bunch of guys. They run really hard. Went there, got fit in 6 weeks, and they're like, all right, well, we're going to give you a contract. And I was like, yeah, no worries, I'm going to give this a crack. And yeah, I've been there. You know, this is my second year being there, so it really taught me a lesson that, you know, exhaust everything that you're passionate about, because once it's done, once footy finishes for me, I want to be satisfied and say, look, yeah, that's enough. Now it's time to maybe go play local footy or teach my son how to kick. Yeah, so.
So you talked about Joey before. It was obviously like one of your first friends, I guess, in Australia, or helped you get into footy, and I mean, you're still best mates with him now. How important is it having that connection and community of friends around you support you?
Yeah, you know, my support network is really important to me, given the fact that what I've been through. You know, I think it's you know, if you got to speak to your mates or your mum and dad, whoever it is, you know, because everyone struggles. You know what I mean? We go through our struggles, whether it's job, like you've got 2 kids, or it's kids, and you know, there are so many people with different knowledge that, you know, I'll speak to Joe a fair bit and check in how his family's going, or how am I going being a parent, and you know, I always feel good walking away from those conversations, and it was and it's something that I've had to learn. You know, ask people for help and speak to people around me, obviously people that I trust, and they've been great. I mean, in particular my parents. So I speak to them a fair bit now, and sometimes it's just 2-minute conversations. Sometimes it's, you know, might go for an hour, whatever it is. But I think it's really important. Yeah.
After you went through that stuff, and you didn't go to your parents and tell them how you were feeling, I'm going to more to the mental health space now. Do now you go and talk to them more, now that all that's happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, given for what I've been through, you know, this is not a bad thing, and you know, it comes from a good place. I get a lot of family and friends checking in on me constantly. So I've just decided, you know, I'm just gonna get on the front foot and actually ring them and, you know, check in on them and let them know I'm going all right. Things, you know, training's been hard. You know, just for a normal conversation, whatever it is. But I think I take the initiative now. I catch up regularly, once a fortnight, once a month, with a psychologist, and it's really important for me just to have a structure. My life's really structured these days. I've found after everything I went through, I need structure. You know, because once I've ticked everything off, I feel really good. I find some really good fulfillment out of having a structure.
So, I know it's going to be hard to talk about, and we spoke before, but do you know what I mean? I think it's the 18th of December 2020. You went to end your life for the second time, like we saw in the documentary. It's hard to talk about, but do you know what I mean? You drove up there, and you didn't really think, did you? You obviously had an argument, I think you said, with your partner. How hard is it now, looking back, that you have a kid? Because obviously she was pregnant at the time. How important is it now that you've got your little boy, and how much that means to you?
Yeah, like he means the world to me, and he's my purpose in life. You know, seeing how my parents raised my siblings. You know, that's why it's so important with the mental health stuff, that I continually give my time to people, talk about it. It's not an easy conversation to have with your friends or whoever it is that you're speaking to. And you know, once Hendrix is old enough to know about the world, you know, I don't want him to be in the same position as I was. That I found it hard to speak to my parents. So if he ever goes through anything like that, I want him to come and speak to me, or that I've set up an environment that he's got good support around him, whether that's his friends, you know, whether it's a school or wherever it is. He's being raised up in a good environment that he can seek the help that he needs. And obviously the mental health stuff, you know, I've gotten more and more comfortable talking about my journey. The reality is, it's what I did, and you know, I'm no longer that person. And the hardest thing about it was, you know, I was struggling so much that I wanted to end my life. And I think, you know, I've done a lot of work with the professionals, you know, a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And one thing they said to me after the incident, and because I regretted it straight away, I think, but you know, we know a story of someone or people who have tried to do a similar thing, and they've been very unlucky. So it's you know, that fact sticks clear in my mind that I didn't want to end my life when I decided to do what I did. You know, sustained significant injuries through my hips and pelvis. You know, that was a long rehab. You know, it was very meticulous, and it's not that I didn't have a choice or about the rehab, but I was given the choice whether to go on medication, mental health medication, or really structure up my days. That's why I was talking about structure is so important for me. You know, that I had to train really hard. I was at the Epworth in Richmond, and you know, I would start in the pool at 7 a.m. in the morning, and the only reason why I'm laughing because I realize I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be here. You know, like I'm surrounded by elderly men and women who have sustained injuries. You know, it's in the warm pool in the morning, a lot of physio, and you know, that was a big reality check. That although I've been through what I went through, I know I look forward to next week. I look forward to next year. You know, those were the conversations that I had with my psychologist. That if I'm optimistic about the future, then I'm on the right path. So.
Mate, I think you're incredibly brave to open up about your story. I know when Joey found out, he was working at the time. He's a police officer, and so he's gone there not knowing if you're alive or not. Yeah. And also your partner at the time, and then realising that you are alive, and they said you're in pretty good condition considering obviously your whole body was broken. But you're alive. How did you go with, do you know what I mean, hospital and your parents, because they didn't know, only, do you know what I mean, your couple of good friends and your partner and the club doctor, they were quite angry that they didn't know beforehand, and they were quite angry in the hospital. And how do you deal with that, considering you're trying to recover and there's heaps of people coming through, and do you know what I mean, what they're thinking?
Yeah, it was really tough because it's obviously needed to get better both mentally and physically. And I think my dad in particular was really hurt, and that's one of those things I'll never take away. Or I can do something about it, help other people through my story and journey. But yeah, it was really tough. In the end, I just had to chat with him, and I said, "You're being really selfish." Although what I did was reasonably selfish. That I think he should be grateful that I've got people around me that I've told what I was going through. Obviously, that didn't help, but one person I'm really grateful for in my life is the club doctor. His name is Peter Bequee. We've had incredible chats over that period, and one of the hardest things when I was in hospital was the amount of people that were coming to visit me. I mean, I'm grateful. It's nice to see familiar faces, see my progress, see how I'm going, but it was to the point where I couldn't rest. I was sleeping 3 times a day. I was just exhausted. So that's when the hospital staff had to step in, and visiting hours were limited, so I can just focus on trying to get myself better. So in the end, after a month or so, me and my dad made up. It took a long time, to the point where I didn't really want to see him at all come to hospital, and I think that must have been really hard for him. But I think there's a time and place, and I think what I was going through, that I just needed to focus on the rehab and getting right, because I started in a wheelchair, and then a frame walker, and then crutches, and finally out to drive, and going out in public was hard. Suffered severe anxiety, because now people knew me for someone who tried to kill himself, not the footballer. So that was hard. But I think the thing with anxiety is, it can cripple you. You can sit at home all day. You can't do anything because you don't have the confidence to face people, and so I had to do it bit by bit. And it was a pretty funny story. My brother used to work at the Arbria Float, and he rang me and he said, "Do you want to come down?" And I completely just forgot. And I was like, "Oh, all right, I'll go down." I went down, and it was still pretty visible. I had a limp. I was still walking around with a limp at the time, and I walked in there. It was a Friday afternoon, and it was quite sunny. There was a lot of people, and I just started sweating. I wanted to run out, just leave the place. But the reality is, that was also part of my healing. Facing what I'm scared of, which is people looking at me and wondering what the hell happened. How did that happen? But little by little, I overbecame my anxiety, and that was one of the best way to get through it.
So the couple of days, or I think it was a couple of days after, you had to decide which surgery to have.
Yeah.
Doing one that was sort of going to severely impact you from running and having a running gait to be pretty much play footy again, I say.
Yeah.
Or get one that you can get back into footy.
Yeah.
How hard was that in terms of, do you know what I mean, your parents getting involved and club doctor and that sort of stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really hard because I think it's SI joint, something like that. You might be able to help me. So it's pretty much just it allows your pelvis to rotate, and they were going to put a pin through it. There was a crack in the middle of it, and in the end, I decided not to have the pin put in because I'd still be walking around with a limp. I wouldn't be able to run or anything like that, and after they clamped my hip together, it closed up a little bit, and that really helped a fair bit. And I don't know, hopefully there's a God out there, because it definitely helped me heal. I healed so quick. There was a lot of times I wanted to complain because I was in so much pain, going to sleep, I couldn't turn. My joints weren't united, so, often middle of the night I'd have to grab my leg and, flip to the other side. So, and then there was a conversation with the head club doctor about medication, because throughout the day I'd just be falling asleep because of the heavy medication, and then he suggested maybe I should get off the medication, and what comes with that is learning to deal with pain management, and which the psychs and psychiatrists were really good, giving me tools, a lot of mindfulness, thinking that you're not, having to think when you're not in pain, when you actually are in pain, if that makes sense. So, they gave me a lot of tools, and we did a lot of work. It was very meticulous, everything that I went through, and also the club physio and the club doctor put together a really comprehensive program for me to follow, and hit each milestone. So I'm strong enough to lift weights, or do a watt bike, or when I do get in the pool, that everything is back to normal. So
how did you go from, do you know what I mean, you've gone from there to then getting back into running, walking, we saw running on the Ultra G treadmill, back training, running on normal ground, and then playing your first game again, like 700 days later. What was the feeling then?
Yeah, man, it was such a long rehab. Probably one of the longest rehabs I've been through. Throughout football, I've had a lot of injuries, knees, surgeries, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this is by far the longest and hardest rehab that I've had to do. But I think in the back of my mind, I always reflect, and playing football is I guess. Well, playing football on the field and playing AFL footy is where I saw myself at my best. So I really wanted to get back on the field and play, because I think if I can do that, then I guess I'm back to my best or close to my best. And then there were a few times where I came close to playing, but the coach just kept me on my toes, and I come in and ask him, like, am I close this week? And he's like, no, we'll let you know when you're ready. So, but I was back playing VFL, and I felt great, but I think he just wanted to tell me and surprise me when I least expected it, because we went up to Queensland in the hub when COVID first started, and I left Hendricks behind, so that was pretty hard, not being able to see him much. We're up there for quite some time. And then I had a family commitment that I had to do over Zoom, and then the boys got on the bus, went to training. And then obviously word got around that I might be close this week to playing. So when I got out there and announced it to the boys, Jack Zeeble, who's someone we've played together for over a long period of time, and there were times when I was in hospital and he just surprised me at like 8 o'clock at night, with a bag of lollies and chocolate, and just sit there and chat for hours. And it was really fitting that he announced it to the team, and obviously everyone else was asking me questions. Are you nervous? Are you nervous about the weekend? And I said, no, I'm not nervous. I've had 700 days to prepare for this. So I went out, and that game up in Gold Coast, I was searching for a goal all day. I wanted to kick a goal so bad, and I tried to kick one from outside 50, and I got dragged straight on the phone, and the coach is like, look, there's not too many people in this team that have a license from outside 50, and you're certainly not one of them. So So it was really humbling, and obviously went back out, and Sean Atley kicked the ball and marked it, and I went back through my routine and kicked the goal, and that was really it was a really great moment. I think not just for me, but over my journey, there's been so many people who've helped me get to where I am. Back out in the field. Being a father now, Hendrix was only a baby at the time. He had no idea what was going on. I'm grateful for my ex-partner. She's such a great mum. She looks after my son. My scheduling is so busy. I spend time twice a week with him. I just played today, so I came straight here. Go see him tomorrow. Spend half a day with him. But just my network of people that have helped me get to where I am. It makes me emotional thinking about it, because I think for what I've been through, so many people were hurt, and I think I owe it to them, but also I owe it to Hendrix, to keep striving going forward, to keep helping people with mental health, and hopefully we can make a change in this place, in this area, because so many people lose their lives, and I think it's only through lack of education, lack of conversations that they should have been had earlier. So that's why I think it's great that you guys are doing a wonderful job. What you guys are doing here today and tomorrow.
Mate, I think you're a remarkable man, and I can't thank you enough for coming. I'm grateful that you're still here. And I know these guys would have got a lot from it. So, thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Love it.